Hello and welcome back. Today I will show you how you can do a near full-on restoration of the rear suspension on the Rover 75 or MGZT. The only two things I won't replace is the trailing arm bushes, because they was replaced 2 years ago on this car, and the rear shock absorbers, because they are only about a year old or so practically brand new. But pretty much everything else will be replaced. So I will show you how you can do this work yourself and what kind of difficulties you might face along the way. Not the most horrible things, but there are some things that's okay to be aware of. Thinking about this is an old car now. The particular car I'm using to show you how to do this is 26 years old. It's a 99 model Rover 75, so it's one of the earliest ones. It has lived 26 years in Oslo, the capital of Norway, which is a town where there's salt every winter, quite harsh climate for a car to live in. So it has taken its toll on this car, no wonder. So mainly the rear suspension is due for a complete makeover or replacement. So upper arms in rear suspension, quite famously for rusting out on the 75, and in worst case also the subframe. Not too common, I think, but this one I was planning to refurbish the rear subframe on this car, but after some struggling with the bolts for the inner bushings on the upper and lower arms, it was actually so compromised by rust, so I found out, so I had to source another subframe for this car. So yes, and I have removed the brakes already prior to starting the operation. So there's no point in me showing you that, because I've already made a video on how to replace the brakes on the 75 and ZT. So go check for that if you want to know that before you start this job yourself. So yeah, with that said, should we just get started? First, I start by removing the grease cap to access the hub nut. Now you will need a 32mm socket to loosen the hub nut. Now you can just gently pull the hub off, and remember to store the washer together with the grease cap and the bearing or hub assembly, so you know where you have everything. Now start with removing the lower spring that goes between the handbrake shoes. And now it's time to remove the expander so that we can separate the handbrake cable from the backing plate. And now you need a 6mm hex socket to remove the 4 fastening bolts for the backing plate. And then you can just pull the backing plate straight off. Sometimes the cable can be seized in the backing plate. Then you need to make a cut in the little tubing here to be able to free the cable from the backing plate. Just keep that in mind. Now, if you have done this job on one of these cars before and wonder why on earth I am removing the backing plate, that's very simple. The bolt in the upper bushing in the trailing arm is absolutely seized in the bushing, so I need to cut it off or use an angle grinder to cut it on each end of the bushing. So in order to have some space, some comfortable workspace to do that quite safely, the best solution is actually to remove the backing plate altogether, because then you can go a little bit bananas with the angle grinder without having to worry about destroying or ruining anything really. So yeah, that's why. First, I will just rip off the rubber roots from the upper bushing. And as you can see now that they are removed, I have much better control over where I am cutting with the angle grinder, so that I can turn the bolt around as I am going about cutting it off in both ends. So yeah, just makes it more simple and nice to do. To show you why this wasn't so bad a thing anyway, as you can see here when I move the bolt. It's actually bad, so it doesn't matter that we have to cut this apart anyway. So should we get on with that? Oh, I think it actually is through. Damn nearly. Now, next is to loosen the bolt or the lower control arm, and to do that I have a 15 millimeter socket here that I am going to use on the bolt on this side, and an 18 millimeter to hold the nut on this side. Simple as that. And I always like to do like this, because then I know where I have them. And what I'm going to do now is take good grip and pull the lower arm apart, because it is split on the middle. I can do that when I have taken it down really. And there is a cover on the lower arm here. It wasn't fastened or seated properly, so I see if I can do that when the new ones are going back on. Now that's loose. I would just want to see how the condition of the lower ball joint is. That appears to be good as well. This is very easy to change later if it should be necessary, but I'm not doing that now. It would be sort of a good idea to change these now at the same time with these, but they are still good. So, and as I said, not too difficult to do later. So therefore I am going to leave them alone. What I'm going to do next is take the shock absorber bolt. I think that was 18 millimeter, if I remember correctly. Yes, it is. has been tightening them very, very good, unnecessarily good. Oh God Almighty, this is ungood. I think I have to put back in again the bolt for the lower arm to have a chance to get this together again. You live, you learn. That's the rule. Let's try a bigger breaker valve. Oh my God! Ah, there it is. Finally. There it is. Absolutely bone dry. It would be better if there was some lubrication on it, but no one seems to care about that anymore, so leave it to the next mechanic. And now I'm moving on to the fastening bracket for the trailing arm bushing, and you need a 17mm socket. For that, it is 3 fastening bolts you need to remove. Finally, it's loose and the trailing arm can be removed. Now I have to hammer out the remains of the ball joint / bolt to be able to use the rosebush tool afterwards to press out the casing or housing of the bushing, if you like. Yes! Victory! The amount of time that operation took is considerably longer than I showed you here, just to make that clear. And now let's align the rosebush tool to press out the rest of the bushing. And here I need 22mm in both ends, both to hold against the nut and to turn the bolt around. And I will just stop from time to time to check that it moves as it should do. And there, the rest of the bushing is out. And now let's prepare the trailing arm for a new bushing. I will start by cleaning up the surface inside with some sandpaper. And then a thin layer of grease so the bushing can slide easier into the trailing arm. And now I have just slightly entered or centered the new bushing so that I can reapply the rosebush tool and press the bushing into the trailing arm. Smooth like. And you just pull it all the way till you see that shiny edge there is flush with. That's absolutely perfect. Success. Now that's the new bushing in place. Now I will list the part number in the description down below so that you can find a new bushing yourself, because you will most likely not find a specific bushing for a 75 or ZT on the aftermarket, but it is simply just a BMW E46 bushing that fits absolutely perfectly. So it's plenty to choose from. So I bought a kit with bushing and new bolt and nut in one kit. Absolutely perfect, very good quality. But as I said, I will list that in the description down below. Now, with that done, it's copy paste on the other side of the car. But there's no reason for me to show you that just the same all over again. That would just be wasteful. So let's jump straight on to removing the subframe assembly. And before I can go any further, I need to drop the exhaust, not the entire system, but the middle section and the rear section, to make clearance for the subframe to go down. That's the back box down. Now let's move over to the center section. First I have to remove this bracket that you can see here. You can quite clearly see someone has bent. And here you need a 10mm socket, by the way. and one here. This seems a little bit angry. Like that. And now these. There it is. Oh, finally. You need to disconnect the ABS sensor. Now, it is much safer to do that inside the car because the connector actually lives under the carpets here. It doesn't have the connector outside the car like it is in the front. Now, this is the safest opportunity because it hasn't been changed before, this or the rear ABS sensors on this car, so it's a very big chance we have to actually destroy them to get them out of the trailing arm. And that's no point in ruining a sensor that actually works. So therefore we are going for the safest safest way to do this, and disconnect the sensor from the inside of the car. So we just have to lift the trim here to locate it, and you will find that here. You can see the connector. I have already disconnected it. There you can see, and I don't know if you can see, it's a little bit there. You can see there is a hole through the bodywork where the other or the sensor part of the wiring is going through with a grommet, and you just disconnect it in here and pull it out, and there is a series of clips on the upper control arm that you need to undo to fully pull the wire for the sensor out. And now finally we can start to lower the actual subframe. Now that's nothing in the way. I have now pushed the jack, and as you can see, the pad is up on the middle of the subframe. So and I have jacked it up so it has just a slight bit of tension just for support. And we have one, as you can see, one fastening bolt there, and equally at the other side, and two on the rear end as well. Now you need 15 millimeter sockets for the subframe bolts. the front ones. Lots of dust and debris. There it is. Now we have only one more left. And be ready for some more dust. And that's the last one. And now we can carefully start to lower the subframe. If it falls over, that's no catastrophe, because the arms are getting replaced. So if we damage them, that's of no concern. And same with the subframe. I'm not going to change it, hopefully, but at least it's getting repainted. So nothing to worry about there. See if I can gently. Might have to support it a little bit. Just reposition the camera a little bit. There, I think, yes. Oops. I'm sorry, guys, you just get knocked down by a spring. Ooh. Hello. And now we can carefully pull this contraction out on the floor. In all its glory, this upper control arms has starting to give away or deform right here. And the same with the other one. So I'm not sure how this looks underneath the pad yet, but it had started to deform on the other one. So I will just clean this up and we can take a closer look. See if we can just pull this broken spring bit up here. Yes, there it is. I'm pretty sure this is the worst spring I have ever seen. Ah, there it is. You have to use this later. Just give them a clean before we put these in the new arms. And now I have to remove the lower spring pad from the, no, excuse me, upper spring pad from the spring here. And if you can see, it is in a groove here, so I just have to twist it to get it off. Can be a little bit challenging, but if you see down here, you need to get the end of the spring. Now it's exactly there, and you need to get it over there, because there is a little catch here. Oh, there it is. There it is. As you can see. And now I can just rip it off. Oh, there it is. And now I have turned this whole contraption on its head. So I will now start with removing the bolts for the bracket bolts for the stabilizer bushings. These tend to break. They are very small, but I don't care about that now because I have bought new ones. So here goes nothing. That got round. That's a good start. Also that rounded off. It's a good thing to have some consistency. Luckily I have a kit for twisted or rounded off bolts and nuts, but I don't know if I have one that is small enough. Looks like we might be lucky. Yeah, I think we have that fits. I think it's 16 millimeter. Yes, it is. Let's hope we get lucky with this. This kit has saved me before, so who knows? I have lubricated the threads from the inside here, so I hope that was enough. Yes. Success! Looks like I might need a smaller one here. There it is. Next one. The last one. Let's try anyway. That broke immediately. that won't work. This one is too seized even for this, so okay, so the next on the post is to remove the lower arms so that I can cut off the stabilizer links, but I have already tried to get out the bolts for the lower arms. It's the whole suspension assembly is now upside down, so these ones are the lower ones. But unfortunately, the captive nut here has torn loose. That happened the last time I did a job like this as well. Even back then, it was a subframe that was considerably less rusty than this is. I need to make a small cut in the captive nut here to get everything loose, so that I can check the subframe even closer to see if it's even savable, because salvageable, because I think it's a little bit too far gone to be absolutely honest. So, but anyways, that's life. It's a 26-year-old car that has lived in Oslo, here in the southeast of Norway, the capital of Norway, where we have proper winters, and they salt like hell on the roads at winter time. So cars are not living a good life here in this part of Norway. But anyways, that's life. So let's make a little cut here. I have now put a slightly worn down cutting disc on my angle grinder so that I can make it fit in here without damaging too much. That isn't good to damage. So let's give it a try. Here it is. And then we can take the lower arm out. That bushing looks a bit compromised, don't you think? My God. That's what salty winter roads does to your car, in case you didn't know. Now for the next one. Well, no matter how bad this subframe is, I have to disconnect or take off the stabilizer bar because I have to reuse that on a new one. So yeah, let's do that at least. Well, as you might have guessed, this didn't turn out very well. That subframe is actually too weakened and too rusty to be safe for any further use. So it took a bit of time, but I managed to get hold of a new subframe because no one here in Norway seemed to have a good one secondhand. And I didn't see the point in buying a second-hand one internationally because the shipping costs and everything made it almost as expensive as buying a new one. Rimmer Brothers initially was supposed to have this in stock by the 1st of July, but they are significantly delayed, so I managed to get hold of this one on eBay in very good condition, or brand new actually. So yes, finally, and as you can see here, a new set of upper and lower arms. These are from Discount MG Rover spares, the ones with better rust proofing and better draining and so on, and brand new fitting kit and jacking pads, because when I'm done reassembling this car, it's going away for some extensive rust repairs, because 26 years of Oslo roads, salty, harsh winter condition takes its toll on the car when it hasn't been rust proofed before. So yeah, I will get you up on a mount and we'll start assembling the rear suspension. But first, I have the spring pads ready here. It's a good idea to place them now first, but before I do that, I will just spray some anti-corrosion. I like to use fluid film before I place the bottom spring pad. And it's a good idea to do that because this is one of the weak points of these arms. Now these are supposed to be better because these have better rust proofing and draining and all of that, but it's better to be safe than sorry. And now I have given both of the spring pads a good clean, and this is the one you use in the bottom of the arm. And one very important thing with these is to line up these correctly with the draining points. So I see like that. Oh, excuse me. There is one point they snap into the hole, and then you can just twist like that until you have aligned the draining holes correctly, and that is very important, so water doesn't collect in here, because that's one of the main issues and reasons why these arms rot out basically. And one more thing, I have seen that more than once, maybe 2 or 3 times now, when the Rover 75 has been in for or to have the rear springs replaced. People have on the workshop hasn't twisted this to the correct position, so the draining holes are actually blocked off, which isn't helpful. So if you ever going to replace rear springs on the 75, make sure you don't block out the draining holes. So, and here we have the upper spring pad that goes on the body of the car. And now we can start to bolt on the arms. Okay, now I have placed the subframe so that it is the correct way for me to lift up afterwards. And when you are getting the lower arms on, I will place them first. As you can see, they are slightly bent in shape. So the correct way to assemble these now is in a smiling position, if you know what I mean. Now, let's get the arm located. There is a captive nut on the opposite side. In the new kit that I bought, there are for new ones with them, but I bought this one with new ones installed because that's how all the brand new subframes are delivered. I'll spray a little bit of grease, or have some grease on these. Especially important here because these tend to seize in the bushings. Now these are zinc primed, but I like to have some grease here anyways. Like that. Seems like it's taking threads quite nicely. Yeah. Now I won't tighten any of these arms because you're not supposed to tighten any of these bolts before the whole assembly is in place and you have the wheels in drive position, because if you tighten these up in the wrong position and start to drive, you will tear the bushings apart very prematurely. Next one. Now I will tighten them just very, very slightly. These are, you need a 16mm socket, by the way, for these. There, it's starting to get tight. Then I will loosen it up a little bit. Yeah, there we are. And the next one. Now it's time for the upper arms. I have now sprayed a little bit of fluid film inside here. This car is going away for rust protection later, but these are a little bit inaccessible, so I just do it to be better safe than sorry. That's uh, difference different arm between left and right side. These are also bowing slightly, and it has to follow the shape of the suspension assembly. So these aren't marked left and right like the originals are, so you have to make sure that you have the bow correctly so that you install the correct arm on the correct side. Now I have to look inside this hole here to see that it's lining up correctly. And I need to use an extension to get the bolts inside. Ooh. Oh, no. Oh, finally. Finally. Oh, please. That's the problem, I cannot see anything. I have to go and look from the other side. Oh, that actually doesn't help anything. So I have to do it in the blind. Finally, it's taking threads. Finally, yes, finally, finally, finally. Now this side. Yeah, slightly firm. That's perfect. Now the next thing I will do, we have brand new drop links. They don't come with the fitting kit or the hardware for this upper portion that you mount into the upper control arm, but you have it here where it's mounted to the stabilizer bar. So I have new fitting kit here. I don't want to use the old ones. The owner wants to keep this car as long as possible, and because of that we play safe. We buy new original fitting kit, bolt RYG 10 12 20, and the nut is FX 11 0057, and all of these are zinc plated, so they are quite they don't rust as quickly as normal. So when you mount these drop links, as you can see, the holes here and bolt goes through here, and you mount it so that this points inwards like this into the middle of the subframe or suspension assembly. And now I will just have a little bit of grease on the bolt. Oops. Like that. And I take the bolt in this way so that, like that, I get the nut on the opposite direction. $15mm on the nut and 13 on the bolt. Oh, I'm not tightening it completely down yet because it is a bushing in there, and I want to fasten the drop link itself to the anti-roll bar first before I tighten up that properly. Now I will do the same on the other side. Yes. And now it's time for some springs. I will fit them now so I can lift them up in the car together with the suspension, because it's easier that way. I have KYBs here. I have heard someone had said these break quite quickly. I have these on my own Rover 75, and they have lasted, well, about 70,000 kilometers now, and they are still fine. What I will do is put some corrosion protection on these as well, so no like moisture or salt or anything like that can get to them and weaken the rust protection, the paint and so on. And I'm sure the owner will be fine with this. So let's get it out of the box. And here you can see the subframe ready to be reinstalled. Now I'm very sorry I lost the footage of me mounting it back into the car again. I'm very sorry about that, but it is the reverse procedure of removing it quite simply. But it is a little bit tricky to make the springs sit in the or line up correctly, so they hit the bodywork of the car correctly and not sticking out to either side. So you have to do a little bit of balancing there, but you'll get there with a little bit of patience. But the subframe bolts, you torque up to 125 Newton meters. So as you can see, I have coated the subframe a little bit more with fluid film, and before I mounted the subframe up in the car again, I coated every surface that will be inaccessible after the subframe is mounted again with fluid film. So I don't have to struggle with that later, because I did come to an agreement with the owner of the car to do the rust proofing of the car myself, because I have done this on both my own 75 and MG ZT that I have, and I quite enjoy doing it, and I can earn a little bit more money and he saves some money instead of ordering an appointment at a company to do it. So yeah, I'm very sorry about that, but now I will proceed with the trailing arms. And what I'm going to do now, before everything goes back together again, is I want to remove the bolt for the main bushing or trailing arm bushing. This was replaced a couple of years ago. And then everything was replaced, like the bracket, the bushing, bolt, nut, everything. That had to be done because it was so severely rusted. So now, to prevent this from seizing again, I will remove the bolt and nut and grease the bolt, so it is possible to get it disassembled again without any problem later, and apply some rust protection, because this bracket has already started to rust quite significantly. I'm not particularly impressed by that, because it is brand new, it is bought from a specialist, and my own car that is now 20 years old, that still is on original bracket, doesn't have the amount of corrosion that this has, only 2 or 3 years old. So I'm not particularly impressed by that, but I will make sure that it doesn't rust any more than it already have done. So yeah, now I will put my phone on a stand, so I will show you how I do it. What you need now is a 50mm socket for the bolt and 18mm for the nut behind here. Like that. There you have it. Still in very good condition. So here you can see the evidence that it is relatively new. Just like that. Now I will try to lift the bracket off. There it is. If you see here, I don't know how you can you can pick up this corrosion that is already building up. The paint is flaking off, and this was new 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not particularly impressed by that at all. It wasn't expensive. I think it's good value for money, but this I would consider not good enough. together. The bolt is now torqued to 75 Newton meters, and the trailing arm is now ready to be reinstalled. And now I use a jack both to lift and support the trailing arm as I get it back in position. Now this can be a little bit fiddly, both getting the trailing arm bushing bracket up in place and to get the lower and upper control arm positioned on the upper and lower bushing on the trailing arm. Little bit fiddly, little bit a test of patience, but just take your time and you will eventually get there. Now I have just entered the bolts for the upper and lower bushing loosely, so I can have some wiggle room, if I can call it that, to locate the trailing arm bushing bracket, because that's the most difficult part really. Bare fortsett. Det gjør ikke noe om det flytter på seg litt grann, da. Nei da, det gjør ikke noe. Now I just tighten up the 3 bolts for the trailing arm bushing bracket. I will not torque them after specification now because the car is going away for a wheel alignment after I am done with it. So they can do it instead. But I just tighten them fairly good for now, and that will be good enough. Now I will tighten up the nut and bolt for the upper and lower bushing, and the correct specification for these 100 Newton meters. And now I will enter the bolt for the shock absorber, and of course I have greased it slightly before I enter it. And here you need an 18mm socket. The correct torque specification for the lower shock absorber bolt is 155 Newton meters, but I won't do that now as it has rubber bushing and I need to wait till the suspension are on the load and the suspension sits in drive position. Now that the trailing arm is in place, the next thing to do is to put back on again the backing plate for the handbrake shoes and such. But first I will just dry off a little bit here so it isn't unnecessarily lots of dust. Doesn't matter that much really, but like that. And make sure the ABS sensor is clean so that you can read correctly. And before I fasten the backing plate, I will spray a little bit of rust protection inside this tubing here that the handbrake wire goes through. I was very lucky with these ones on this car that the wire hadn't seized in this tubing, because this is aluminium and the end of the wire isn't so very often, or the handbrake cable, sorry, the handbrake cable seizes totally inside here, so you have to actually cut it to remove the handbrake cable. And by doing this, we won't have to think about that if it has to come apart again anytime soon. Little bit of lubrication on the threads. Like this. This is supposed to point downwards, by the way. Like that. And there is also a cutout here, as you can see. That's where the ABS sensor sits. So it's so this is just an area for it to be able to read the bearing or the ABS ring that's built into the wheel bearing or the hub assembly. Like that. And we have the screws here, or the bolts. You need 8mm hex for these ones. Just enter them by hand first. And you're not supposed to tighten this very much, not necessary. So I will use my impact driver just like this. Plenty enough. Here you can see how it sits correctly. You have the opening or the tubing for the handbrake cable there, and you can see the sensor there. That's why you have a groove here in the back plate. So let's get the cable through. There we are, like that. And now I will continue with the handbrake expander, and I have made sure these are loose or free, not stuck, because these can seize up over time. Clean them and have a little bit of grease or something in here, so they don't seize up again, so they move freely. So this direction in here, I'll move you over a little bit, like this. You see this here goes over the cable like that, and now just push that in there. Oh, excuse me. Oh. And that one like so. Before we get the last spring over here to pull this together. And of course I had to take one of the handbrake shoes off, because when the upper spring is already in place, I cannot I'm not able to fit the lower one, because that's much thicker. It has much more tension than the upper one, so it's hopeless to fit with the other one in place. So therefore I have to do it the other way around. Therefore I loosen up one of the shoes and put on the lower spring first, and then the upper one, because that's much thinner and much easier to work in place. And that's the lower spring in place. Now we can fasten the handbrake shoe again. And that's the locking pin back in place. Very easy to do on these. And next is to fasten the upper spring. And that's the handbrake mechanism back together again. And now I'll just quickly wipe over the surface and have a little bit of grease before the hub goes back on again. Now make sure that it's seated properly and just give it a couple of light taps with a rubber hammer. And now we must not forget to put the washer back in place before the hub nut. Now I just take the first part with an impact driver and then torque up the hub nut to about 210 Newton meters. And now don't forget to tap down where you can see the groove on the hub nut, so it's locked in place and doesn't work itself loose. And now refit the grease cap. And again, I'm not going to show you that I put the brakes back together again. As I said initially, I have done a separate video on how to do the brakes on these cars. If you want to see that, go check it out. And as you can see here, just above the upper control arm, you can see that hole in the floor there. That's where you get the ABS sensor wiring in through again. Here we are inside the car again, behind the rear seat back. Pull up the carpet, and here you can see this. Now they are connected back together again, so now I can go underneath the car and push the sealing plug for the hole in the floor there in from underneath, because it isn't a good idea to pull the wire too much, because you can actually damage it. There you can see it's pushed up in the floor and fastened in that clip just beside there. So now it's sealed, so we don't get any water inside the car. There, it's all back together. So now we can put the carpet down and the back seat in place. Here you can see the bolt for the lower arm here. It's now tightened, and you can see just inside that hole there, the bolt for the upper one, and you access that from up here. It is tight up here to reach it really, but it is possible. And as you probably can see, exhaust is back in place too, all the way as you can see, the anti-roll bar is missing because I am refurbishing that so it doesn't look rusty and ugly. So I am grinding it down and giving it a thorough once over so it looks a little more suitable in place with all of the new suspension components that we have here. Everything back together there also. I didn't bother to show you on this side. It's just the same as the other side, so it's just the same all over again, really. And finally, after several months, the car is now back on its wheels again. I will now take it away to get welded because there are quite a lot of corrosion that needs addressing before inspection. And when the welder is done, I will book it in for an inspection and wheel alignment because, of course, the whole rear suspension has been done and parts of the front suspension, not too much, only the inner and outer tie rod on the driver's side. So, yeah, when the car's done at the welder, I will get back to you. The welder is now done, so I have now refitted the anti-roll bar and fitted brand new stainless anti-roll bar bushing brackets and heat sinked bolts that doesn't rust as easily as other types of metal bolts, because that's all for the better, really. So now I have booked it in for an inspection and wheel alignment, so I will update you when I know how that has gone. And the car passed its inspection with only one advisory for one of the front fog lights being slightly too low, but that's really not a problem at all because that's used so rarely anyways. So that's good news. Now I can get on with the rust proofing. And now the rust proofing is done and the owner can finally get his car back. And so, I hope you have enjoyed watching this video, that it is helpful in some way, that you possibly have gained some confidence to do a job like this yourself. Thank you so much for watching. Consider like and subscribe if you want to. And welcome back. See ya.